Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Kelvin P. Ringo here, Prince of Positive, coming to you once again from lively Liverpool, New York. How are you doing today? I think this summer thing's in full bloom here. Though, not without a little rain. As a matter of fact, July 1st weekend, it pitched a blue fit here. And people were starting to look for another arc, I think. Tornado in the area, massive rain, flash floods, sinkholes even, major power outages, and in Utica, New York, just a scant hour away. Water was hood high on cars on the main highways. Of course, as luck would have it, in my little neighborhood, I heard there was just some heavy rain, nothing huge. No power outages even. And I say I heard because, well, I was not in town that weekend. I'd gone to a family wedding in Charlotte, North Carolina, where the weather was, dare I say, pretty much perfect. And by the time we got back home on Monday here in Syracuse, Liverpool, the weather here was perfect too. As a matter of fact, when I got home to pull into my street, the neighbors were laughing and smiling and dancing in the streets, literally dancing in the streets. And that's the way my little neighborhood is. A couple of years ago, and in my world a couple could be 2 or 10, because my sense of time frames these days seems to be a little skewed. But a few years ago, we did have a tornado or two come through town. As a matter of fact, it bounced around. It just bounced around and played with people. A friend of mine had trees uprooted from her yard and laid down next to her car. But 30 minutes away, tornado picked up a house, sat it down on top of a neighboring house 500 yards away. But in my little neighborhood, just rain. And that's okay with me. I think most everybody now knows that I'm a Toastmaster. And in our Toastmaster meetings each evening, we have a brief inspirational word just to kick the meeting off. At tonight's meeting, my friend and fellow Toastmaster Michael Bodenbach read this short opening. 32 years ago this week on July 10th, one of the worst mistakes in history was corrected. This is the day that Coca-Cola realized the new Coke was horrible, and they reintroduced the original formula. And then he went on to say, just like Coca-Cola, we all make mistakes. But our soul and character are enriched by making mistakes, for it's these experiences that make the original us that much better. If you don't make some mistakes, you're not trying. English writer Neil Gaiman once stated, I hope that in this year to come, you make mistakes. Then you're making new things, trying new things, learning, living, pushing yourself, changing your world. You're doing things you've never done before, and more importantly, you're doing something. So what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about focusing on your wins. Welcome to the Intensely Positive Podcast with your host, Kelvin P. Ringo. Preset your mindset to make every day count and make positivity your way of life. Are you ready?
Let's just do this.
So let me ask you a question. A serious question. Have you ever done anything right? Of course you have. I know that sounds like a silly question, because everybody's done something right. And if you're over the age of 12 and you're listening to this podcast, you've done a lot of things right, or you wouldn't be here. Now try this. Have you ever made a mistake? Sure. If you're like me, if you're like most people, you've made a mistake. Now, I've got one more question for you. Did you learn anything from the mistake you made? Did you? Did you learn how not to do that again? How to do something different? How to zig when you should have zagged last time? Did you learn what won't work when you're doing something? Well, see, therein lies the magic of a mistake. You may make a mistake, but when you learn something from the mistake, it's no longer a mistake. It's a teaching moment. So we have all these experiences in our lives, all these things we've done. Some worked, some didn't work. But you're still here, which means an overwhelming number of the things you've done right. But when it comes to regular life and somebody asks us to do something or we make a mistake, suddenly we go back into our memory and we replay all the mistakes we've ever made in life. You probably remember stuff you did when you were a small child. It was a mistake, and you play that too. And you add it to all the other mistakes you make, and suddenly you're miserable and you're paralyzed because you're concentrating on the mistakes. When the fact of the matter is you learned from the mistakes and transmuted them to be wins. And what we've got to learn to start doing is focusing on our wins. I remember when I was a kid, I was walking down the street and I was, back in the day when you could walk around the streets when you were a kid by yourself. Cambridge, Maryland. I'm not even going to say what year that was. And I walked from home to school and we walked downtown. We walked everywhere. And that was, 5, 6, 7, who knows? I don't remember because I told you that time frame thing, right? And I wanted to cross the street. So as I got to the corner, I looked around and I stepped off the curb. And just as I stepped off the curb, this car careened right past me. And it was like, whoa! I almost got hit. And most people in life right there are going to end up with an imprint that said, I almost got hit, and they're going to paralyze themselves. When what they really should be doing is going, whoa, I'm glad I had those reflexes. I stepped off the curb, but I backed up out of the way. I did that right. And instead of lamenting over the fact that you almost got hit or you almost made a mistake, you ought to be rejoicing like crazy and turning flips and somersaults because you didn't. You can almost get hit by a car. You can almost make a huge blunder. A few months ago, my daughter was riding down the road with my baby grandson. Now, he's not a baby, but he's a baby grandson because because his brother is older than him. So I have a baby grandson and I have an older grandson. So the baby grandson just turned 15. But a few months back, they were driving down the highway, minding their own business, and someone traveling at a significant rate of speed higher than their rate of speed rear-ended them, moving on the highway, doing about 65 miles an hour. My daughter lost control of the car, as I understand it, being pushed around by somebody who was driving 65 and hit them. But they ended up on the side of the road. The car just kind of spun and then it straightened and then it gravitated to the side and it went down the guardrail, as I understand it, and it came to a stop. Perfectly fine. My daughter and my grandson got out of the car. Most people will spend the rest of their lives going, I almost got hurt. When the fact of the matter is, there's a huge celebration because you didn't. Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, they tell me. Though I will admit to getting hit at 65, they could almost get it. But the fact that they walked away from the car, incidentally, the person that hit them didn't walk away from the car. I mean, it wasn't a fatal injury, but they had to go to the hospital. My daughter, on the other hand, her car was messed up, but she and her son were safe. Not a scratch, not one, none. 0. I don't even think they had whiplash from that. And that, in my opinion, is a win. And we got to start focusing on our wins. Maybe you're a sports fan. I don't know if you know this, but in baseball, if you've got a 300 average, you're kick butt awesome. You're a star. But when you start looking at the numbers for a 300 average, that's 300 out of 1,000. That's only 30%. So in baseball, because you can hit 30 out of 100 balls, just 30 out of 100, you can be a star. In school, if you get 30 out of 100 questions, you fail. You got to start focusing on your wins. Michael Jordan said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career, lost almost 300 games. 26 times, he says, I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. And I've failed over and over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed, because he's not focusing on the misses, he's focusing on the wins. Okay, how do you start focusing on your wins? And that's a very good question, because most of us aren't taught to do that. So here's some ideas. Number 1, go, sit down, think, remember. Someplace quiet, someplace where you can relax and let your mind relax. Write down everything you've ever done that worked. Okay, if you're 112, you've got a long list. Split it up into 30-year groups and let it go. But write down everything you have ever done, or at least so you get a nice long list. Everything that you're good at, everything that anyone of importance has ever told you you were good at. That's a great start. Spend some time writing those things down. When you get that list done, then choose top 10. Top 10 for now. I write down exactly what makes you good at all those things. Each one of them individually. What do you know? Where did you learn it? How have you learned? How has it helped you in the past? How do you use it to help other people? Write that stuff down. Next, take a look at the skills you use in those top 10 and how they apply to each other, how they build on each other, how they complement each other. And when you're done, you'll have a nice long catalog of skills and virtues to apply to any situation. And don't forget skills like intuition, analytical ability, logic, the ability to see patterns in relationships. Don't forget those skills. Those are all great skills that you probably use and don't realize you use, but once you name them, you can count them. And after you do that for that list, you'll have strengths that you can legitimately list and focus on for any upcoming task or project. You are awesome. Allow yourself to recognize your skills and start focusing on your wins and your strong suits. And we'll see you next time.
Wow, that was awesome.